I think yeah, that's the main point, that if they don't feel understood, then it creates sort of an awkward tension, and you don't, instead of focusing on chilling together, you're focusing on trying to speak to one another. Sorry, yeah, so I was saying, if you want to be fluent in those languages, then you're looking at a different bar. You're looking at being able to understand most of a conversation in a given language and reply adequately while being understood. So that doesn't mean that you know all of the most complex vocabulary, and you can write like super detailed literary essays in that language. No, it means you can go to that country and get by, and sort of get your way around and do the things that you need to do in the language of the country, in my opinion. However, if your aim is mastery, then
Yeah.
your language learning is never going to stop, because you're always
Yeah,
going to be
well,
learning new words, always going to be learning new phrases, always going to be consuming content and improving the way you write, improving the way you read, improving the way you speak. Um, because
yeah.
obviously learning a language is multifaceted. So if your aim is mastery, then I think you'd never stop learning in language.
I think you can have more than one accent because okay, I could. I mean, I'm not really good at imitating American accents, but I think I can try to talk with a more American accent if I want to. I know. I think I'm not really good because I didn't try to practice that, but I feel like you want to, you can speak with more than one accent.
Yeah, yeah.
And okay, so what do you think is the? Because like a lot of people for like for example polyglots, hyper polyglots speak like 10, 20 languages. Do
Hmm.
you think like there's a limit of languages? Do you think it's like too much to learn more languages? Do you think it's like a matter of kind of you need to put up limits of the languages that you learn? Because or do you think like a fixed number, you say six languages or do you think like I mean what's your opinion about that?
Um, Again, the answer depends on your individual preferences and your goals. If you want to be a doctor and you know that you're going to only work in English countries, then there's no point learning like 10 languages, because that's not what your profession is going to revolve around. Uh,
But what language? What about learning one language?
um, Probably the ones that your patients tend to be. So if you tend to get a lot of Spanish and French patients, then it might be worth learning some of that language, because it can
Yeah.
help you understand them better when you're treating them. So I think it's very context specific. Um, on the other hand, if you are just passionate about languages in general, you want to translate in as many languages as you can, you want to do freelance work and travel the world, then go ahead. Don't put a cap on your languages. Just make sure you're practicing all of them as much as you can.
Yeah. But do you think for everyone, like this is for everyone, not a regardless of the circumstances of each person, do you think like
Um,
is it worth it to learn a foreign language?
Definitely. At least
At least
one
one.
other language, I think.
Yeah.
Purely because of I mean, I've not really gone into the studies, but I know that your brain thinks differently when you learn a different language. I definitely noticed that I sort of started understanding um, sentences and phrases and metaphors and concepts, and I started thinking differently when I became more fluent in Spanish, purely because um, a country's culture is embedded in its language. So you are bound to experience a different way of living through better understanding a language by default. Um, so it really does open up not just your career doors, but just your way of living in general, learning a second language, especially if it comes from a culture that's different to your culture.
Wow. I mean, I think that I don't know about you, but in my case, I think I'm more like outgoing. Like for example, like before I was kind of shy talking to people on the street, whatever. Now
Mm-hmm.
it's like, hey, how are you doing, bro? And I mean, before it was like the excuse of, oh, are you from? Because I listen people talking English and I was, hey, are you from like, the UK or whatever?
Mm,
Uh, and people were, oh yeah, yeah, and then but now it's like even with Spanish people, I'm kind of more outgoing. I could just like approach people on the streets.
yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, well, this is my father, Joseph.
Hola,
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I leave you talk.
Okay, see you, daddy.
See you.
That's my daddy. Yeah. Okay, what we're talking about? Ah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. I feel like I'm able to approach people on the street much more outgoing, much more confident about what I do. Yeah, so
Hmm.
I feel like I'm more extrovert because of language learning.
Hmm.
So and
And
also
I think, sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna say, I think because you gain more confidence when you learn more English, that also made you be more extroverted in that you don't feel like you won't be understood, or that people won't really want to speak much to you.
yeah,
Because you know that your level is much stronger than what it used to be.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, bro. And also because when I started learning English, I just kind of start to talk to other people because it was
Mm,
the refectory and I feel like that really made me to I don't know be more comfortable around unknown people
mm,
and yeah and but I didn't I think apart from that apart from that there have been lots of benefits. For example, I didn't really used to listen to podcasts or videos in general,
mm.
but like I started to listening to podcasts and that kind of stuff because of I wanted to improve my English.
Yeah,
So and now I listen to podcasts every day, and I
mm,
learn a lot of stuff. Like I probably wouldn't have been motivated to learn before, yeah, because of language learning. So yeah,
that's good.
yeah. What about you? Did you listen to podcasts and that kind of stuff before learning languages, or it was? I mean, for example, do you listen to podcasts in Arabic?
Um, it depends. I only ever listen to podcasts if I want to learn something. Um, I just find that at this stage in my life, most of the engagement that I can be having with languages is to disconnect from what I'm doing. So if I'm studying most of the day, I'm not going to want to listen to like a French podcast about, I don't know, engineering or something sort of productive. I'm just going to want to watch maybe a French series about something funny, so because I'm taking a
Yeah,
break from studying and then go back to studying. That might change later. Once I maybe have a more established job and I can just disconnect it from 5 p.m. onwards or so, and then just listen to different topics. But at the moment, it's more like if I'm gonna maybe Arabic, sometimes the news, but other than that, it's usually just like series to disconnect.
yeah, yeah, bro. Okay. I forgot one thing that I wanted to tell you. Yeah, I feel like
Mm,
learning, well, particularly English, but overall languages. I feel like learning languages, particularly English, because it's the international language, gives you out of freedom that otherwise you couldn't get, even if you
mm,
got all the money of the world. For
yeah,
example, like, yeah, you go to the UK, you don't speak English. Even if you have all the money of the world, you are not going to have the same pleasurable experience.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I feel it gives you a lot of freedom, and I really feel like the concept of freedom rather than money, the goal. Yeah.
Mm,
So I really like the idea of like things that give you freedom, and I think languages, particularly English, gives you a lot of freedom. Yeah. What do you think
yeah.
about it?
No, I completely agree. I think Spanish has only brought me benefits. As I was saying, I've been able to speak it anytime I've traveled. I've gone to Germany and I spoke more Spanish than I did German. Not that I know much, but it's just every time I've traveled, I've had the chance to use one of the languages that I've learned. So no doubt it does expand your boundaries and improve your experience overall.
Yeah. Yeah, because for example, there are also things that money can't buy. Like being fit gives you more freedom, for example.
Yeah.
Like, because you can move, do more activities. I don't
Hmm.
know, do more things that you like. And even you have more money, like you are not like you don't have a threshold of being
Yeah.
fit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not going to be worth it. So yeah, but
Hmm.
it's all about the freedom. Yeah.
Definitely.
And also I feel like there are like, let's say, 10 languages which are spoken by 80% of the population. So it's not
Hmm.
like it's not really about learning one language that is spoken by 1 million people. You know, it's more about like learning languages that are spoken by 1,000, hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of millions of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, because if you are not a, I mean, if you are learning languages, but you are having a professional career different from language learning, I think it's important to, yeah, I think there's no point in learning languages that are only spoken by 1 million people. 'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, unless you want to live in that country, maybe,
yeah, that kind of
um,
stuff, yeah.
or you're just super passionate about that specific the culture associated with that language. It tends to be a practical decision, which turns into an emotional one as you start to engage more with the language and the culture.
Yeah.
In my opinion, at least.
No, yeah, I 100% agree with you. Yeah. How do you incorporate daily? Well, no, okay. When you're a beginner, you're starting on languages. What kind of stuff do you do to practice language when you're a beginner, when you're initiating yourself?
Good question. Um, I think one key part is learning as much vocabulary as you can. Um, but I think it's important to make that an engaging activity.
Yeah,
So when I have tried to um, improve my Spanish during that summer that I told you about before university,
yeah.
I tried to sort of have like 1 or 2 hours in the day where I sit down and I do like a Spanish grammar or like
Vocab
um,
learning or whatever.
vocab learning or something. But then I found that to be too boring for me to sustain. So I actually decided to instead watch kids shows because they spoke more slowly.
Ah, okay.
Obviously, each person's approach is different,
Yeah.
and I think podcasts can be a very good start for beginners because
Really, for
podcasts can
beginners?
integrate. Sorry,
For beginners, even.
yeah, but podcasts geared towards language learning, not just
Oh,
podcasts in a
okay.
language in general.
Okay.
So, a language learning podcast, to be more
Ah,
specific,
okay. Yeah.
um, to so that you can maybe you're driving, you put it on, you start picking stuff up. Um, and I think that this has been the route that's mostly sort of, I guess that's how we learn as children as well. We just we're born and then we listen to our parents how they speak and then we learn from that. So I think learning through hearing and through language learning oriented podcasts is very important for beginners. After that, if you want to go more towards fluency and stuff, then you definitely need to start practicing the grammar itself, um,
Yeah.
and actually doing some exercises and stuff, but sort of taking a more formalized approach, if you will. But if for people who are starting out, language learning podcasts are the best way to go. And to accompany that, as you progress, start watching series in that language.
Okay.
There are some series that are also geared towards language learning. So, for example, there was one called I think Extra that I watched when I first started Spanish.
Okay.
When I reached an intermediate level, I was able to understand them more easily. Um, but what's also important is that after that I switched to like cartoons and then to actual series. But I always tried to watch stuff that was a bit more than my level, so that I was always constantly
Catching
sort
up.
of improving. Yeah. Um, Otherwise, if you just stick with podcasts that are your level, then you're just not going to progress.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, bro. Right now with French, what I'm doing is well, first of all, I push myself to, for example, if I'm going for a walk
Mhm.
in the morning or I'm going driving,
Yeah,
the first time of the day that I do that,
yeah,
I listen to French. I mean, I'm listening to a podcast of football, which is like, I mean, I didn't understand everything, but I kind of get. It's easier for me to get the conversation because I listen to names of people I know. I listen to the names of the clubs, so it's kind of easier to catch up for the
yeah.
conversation. And then what I'm doing right now is as well is to listen to music and
Hmm.
try to not only listen. I'm taking the lyrics and I'm translating the lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm translating words and trying to figure out the meaning of some words. And
Hmm.
sometimes I check in the Google Translator meaning of sentences so that I know the.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't really know because I'm not really fluent in French, so I don't really know if my technique is really effective to be honest. But I'm keen doing it, which I think is the
Hmm.
most important thing.
I
Uh,
think that's definitely the key, as you're saying. Consistency. Even if you only do 20 minutes a day, as long as you're doing constantly and consistently, that's what's going to get you somewhere. Because I didn't, just because I watched like 2, 3 series in the summer, it doesn't mean I became fluent.
yeah,
It just means that I built a more solid foundation to then practice with people when I came to uni, and then watch more advanced series and then practice with more people until I
yeah.
became fluent.
Because I mean, to become fluent, do you think it's compulsory to talk to people? Like, could you become fluent just listening to things and singing and whatever? Or do you think there's a step that is mandatory about talking to people?
I think the thing that talking to people brought me the most is one, correcting mistakes, because if you don't speak it, you would just think that you know how to say things right because you can listen to them,
Yeah,
but it's much more easier to understand something than it is to say it.
yeah,
So that's one thing. The second thing is, um, they've speaking to people has helped me sort of incorporate native expressions in um,
into your mind.
in my speaking, in my Spanish.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I would be saying things which are grammatically correct, but no one really says them. If you see what I mean.
yeah, yeah,
So it's a mix of both. I think it just gets you to that top band of fluency as opposed to uh,
yeah.
just being
No,
able to speak and understand.
I could do your way because you are the you are the guest. So
Yeah.
okay, bro. So yeah, it's been a pleasure, Joseph, and see you next time, bro.
Yep. Thank you
See you
for
later,
having me.
man. Bye.
Bye.